Welcome to episode 2 of Students in Distress.
In this episode, we'll talk with Wally, a master student who has both experience with medicine and philosophy.
Who also happens to be an honor student.
And in this episode, we'll discuss
Being a first generation student.
imposter syndrome,
Medicine.
grades,
Landlords.
and a pessimistic philosopher.
Hello everyone, we have another guest here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Wally. I'm 22 years old. I study medicine and philosophy at the University of Groningen, and I will be here at this. I was invited to this podcast based on filling out a survey, so that's cool.
Yeah, because you're perfect.
Yeah.
Am I?
I was joking. No, I'm joking now. No.
So you're saying he's not perfect?
Yes, exactly, because that's why he's
That's
here
offensive.
to talk about struggles.
Because I'm not perfect.
Yes, no one's perfect. That's the point of our podcast.
What do you think yourself? Do you consider yourself to be perfect?
No, and there's good reason for that. I don't
For example, list them in public.
list my imperfections. No, it's I mean, if I want to list my imperfections, I'll be working for a long time because as a human being, you are by definition imperfect, I believe. So there is such a thing as perfection. It's just something that I think humans can never attain or conceive of. So you can never have a perfect thought. You can never do a perfect action or be a perfect being. You're always just imperfect. So if I have to list that, then I have to list about 8 billion people.
Is
Yeah.
that the philosophy background speaking in you, or
A little bit.
yeah?
It did sound interesting.
But how did you switch? Because like you said, you're doing medicine now, or
no.
Ye-
or was I?
So I didn't switch. I did/do both.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
So
nice.
what I did is I
I'm such a good listener.
doesn't matter. It's fine.
Like, no, you're wrong.
Worst podcast ever.
Cut that.
I yeah, good.
We're gonna leave that in. Yeah.
Yeah,
Next.
we are.
Yeah.
It's for the bloopers section. I started studying medicine in 2019, and after 2 years, I also did the bachelor's honors program, and you had to choose certain electives in that program. And one of the electives I took was a philosophy of art course. At the time, it was you had to fill in a list of your preferences, and at the bottom, I put philosophy of art because I thought that's nuts, like that's weird. I don't like philosophy, and I still was placed in that course. But it was a good thing because I took the course. I thought it was amazing, and after that year, I thought maybe studying philosophy is something that I would like as well. Medicine is very set in stone, really. So medicine is really just where you learn facts and you learn about how the body works, and you get this idea of what patients are, but after 3 years you have no clue what patients are because you've never seen one in real life. So I didn't even have any formal ethics education in medicine. So you would want your doctors to be ethical by the end of their degree, but during my bachelor's I did not have any, let's just say, content-filled medical ethics lectures. And so I thought, let's also study philosophy. So I did like the philosophy of a specific discipline program, which is essentially just the philosophy minor plus a thesis plus some electives. And then they just take 120 ECS from your regular degree and they say, oh, well, count that double. And now it's a bachelor's degree.
Oh.
So it's a cheap way to do it, I guess.
And how is it working out at this point, doing both?
I'm not doing both at the same time right now. So
Oh.
I'm just doing the regular master's in philosophy. I just applied for a different master's in philosophy as well that I hope to start in September. I won't be starting medicine, or at least I won't be starting clinical rotations until, well, let's just say September 2024.
Oh.
I am
That's
currently...
so close.
Is it close?
Yeah, totally.
I think it's pretty far away because most people start their clinical rotations immediately after, but I was 21 when I finished, and I thought, yeah, I don't know. Do I already want to see patients when I'm 21? Like, my patients are then oftentimes 2, maybe 3 or 4 times as old as I am. I have to tell them what's wrong in their life. You have to, give people diagnoses. You have to test people for things. You have to give them lifestyle advice. Why am I the right person to give them lifestyle advice? I'm vegan, but that, like, for me, that means that I love eating potato chips and instant noodles. I'm a smoker. I do recreational drugs. Like
These are the
why?
imperfections we asked about like 3 minutes ago, by the way. Thank you for answering us.
Right. So I didn't feel like the right person to be a doctor in training yet. So I thought I would just first do philosophy.
Give it 1 year.
Yeah, give it a few years and then
2 years. Yeah,
2 years.
it's 2 years, and then I'll start again.
Yeah, but with some extra philosophy in your backpack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some extra. Okay, but how was it like doing it up until now? Just navigating all those, a lot, because it does sound like a lot, and
Yes.
you probably are stressing. I mean, I
Yes.
assume.
I mean, getting to study medicine in the first place is a pretty big hurdle because
Right,
I come from a low income family. The first person in my family to ever study in general, regardless of whether it's vocational school or anything. I'm the first person to do something after high school.
So triple pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. My father at first instance wasn't even supportive of me going to university, so that's also difficult.
Really?
So I'm financially speaking, I'm doing everything on my own.
Oh.
And getting through the selection procedure for medicine is very difficult as well because there's only 400 spots, which is already the highest in the Netherlands, and still in my year, I think about 1,900 people applied.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
that's a lot of people for the same spot that you're hunting for. Most people who get in have parents who are doctors or nurses or anything in the medical field. I didn't have that either. Again, my parents finished little vocational school, and my dad didn't even finish high school. So I'm not part of the demographic that typically starts studying medicine. And during medicine, it was very difficult as well because for the first 2 months, I was really out of place. I actually wanted to study mathematics.
Oh, wow.
I thought that would be more fun. I was really good at mathematics in high school.
I think you're the first person I hear that refers to mathematics. Oh my God, they're so fun. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, I don't like it anymore because I haven't done it in a couple of years. And if I look at like differential equations from high schoolers now, I think how was I ever able to solve those?
Yeah.
But I didn't even pass high school biology. So starting medicine was a risk. I passed the selection. I thought, well, might as well do it then if they think I'm capable of doing so. But for the first 2 months, I really felt out of place, and I really wanted to drop out.
Why did you choose then medicine over mathematics eventually?
Because of a very short-sighted idea that if I were to study mathematics, I would end up as a math teacher, and I didn't see myself doing that. Now, I have friends who started mathematics at the same time when I studied medicine, and now they live and work in Amsterdam. They earn 6 figures a year, and I'm like, well, that's a lot more than I would as a doctor, and I take, well, let's just say 3 to 4 times more time to complete my degrees than a mathematician would. So that's
But are you all right with your choice that you made?
I think so. Because part of the reason why I still wanted to study medicine despite, failing high school biology was because a doctor had these qualities that I knew I did not have. So a doctor has to be patient. I'm very impatient. Walking in the street, if people are walking in front of me, I'm willing to kick you over if you don't walk fast
I
enough.
hope
Don't walk in front of him.
I really hope your future patients are not listening to this because
Well, you've probably developed some patience.
yeah,
Well, that was- well,
let's say that.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
that's been the purpose
You're
of,
trying.
of studying, exactly. So the reason why I do it is in order to develop these things, because as a doctor you have to be patient. As a doctor you have to be studious. I didn't pass my high school biology finals. I barely
you tick all the boxes.
I barely attended I barely attended class in my last year of high school anyway, because as soon as you turn 18 you can call yourself in sick, so I just called myself in sick most of the time.
share everything.
I just didn't want to go, and so there were all these kinds of qualities that a doctor was supposed to have, and a doctor will develop and hone and cherish, that I did not have. And I thought, well, maybe it's then interesting to do something that's purposefully difficult or purposefully challenging, because I want to be more patient with people, because I don't want to always respond with some sort of nagging comment, right?
Yeah.
And how did you cope with the challenge? Because it obviously was challenging, I think, then.
Right. So at first, being impatient means that you want very, very quick results, and medicine can't offer you that. At least if when you study it can't offer you fast results, and being a doctor also doesn't typically give you fast results. So I didn't pass my first exam, I didn't pass my second exam, and that's the end of the first block. So I didn't pass anything in the first block, and that sucks, right? So you get very impatient with yourself, and I felt like other people were way smarter and way more studious than me, or than I was at the time. So I thought, well, am I really doing myself a favor, or am I just harming myself for sake of it or something? And there's a couple of situations in those first 2 months that helped me sort of to see things more in perspective, so to say.
To be honest, based on the input we got from students, a lot of people mentioned like imposter syndrome. Like it was so many, and you also mentioned that, and I feel like probably a huge part, if not all, are struggling with that.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, imposter
yeah.
syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. Repeat it for third time. Yeah, but how do you deal with that stress? Because for me as well, like when you are initially at the program, especially, and then you feel out of place, and when everyone else speaks, and sometimes you don't have much to say.
Right.
It's very daunting.
So I think it starts with a very rational and minimal conception of self-confidence. So which sounds very philosophical, and the word self-confidence is something that every social science teacher has told you about. Every coach will tell you about, and will ask you $40 an hour to pay you for. What I mean with this is that you still got into university, and it's not something that they do right. It's something that there's a rigorous procedure to. At least, especially for international students, I would say when you come here, you have to have your grades translated. You have to get your diplomas and your course descriptions translated. They have to check it out, whether it aligns with Dutch high school diplomas. Dutch high school also isn't fun. So if you just do the regular VWO, you're stuck there for 6 years. At least I was stuck there for 6 years. I didn't like it and really hated it in my final exam year. So you have to jump through all of these hurdles. And eventually the university says, all right, you're fine. You can come in, right? So that should give you some sort of minimal self, how did I say it again? Like a
self-confidence?
Yeah, so like a minimal self-confidence. So you can say, well, all right, at least I think I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right? And it's rational because I don't think the university is irrational. I don't think that they do this procedure in order to make mistakes. So I think that they're doing this and that it's relatively watertight or airtight. I should say that's the English word for it. So that's why I say rational, minimal self-confidence.
I think that makes sense. Because I also tend to think, oh, what am I doing here? What do I have to bring to this conversation? What do I know? I know I have studied, but do I remember stuff? Do I even know what I'm doing? And
I mean, don't ask me any medical questions. I have a bachelor's degree in medicine, but don't ask me any medical questions because I will not know for the large part.
Oh, yeah. I'm the same with statistics.
Right.
I've done psychology bachelor. I've just passed
Lots
the
of
courses.
statistics.
Yeah. And I passed them at once, no problem. And now I'm like, do I remember that stuff? But I think the thing is that you know what to look up, you know where to look, and you know.
So it's some sort of informed guessing or some sort of informed,
Yeah, I think that is the difference. But also, I don't want to say that everybody should do it, but I've also learned in theater a few years ago that fake it till you make it also has some truth in it.
Definitely, yeah.
Because I was like, I have never done any theater lessons, and I'm now gonna take those, and I do not feel very confident about it. And then I thought, well, I'm just gonna try and act like I am confident in this group, just to make a good start.
I mean, that's essentially the process that you go through in the first couple of weeks of university, right? So as soon as you start out, you're 18, 19 years old. Some people are 17 because they're prodigies. or something, or at least way smarter than I am. And what you do is, for the first couple of weeks, you socialize, right? So you see other people, you take courses with them, you see lecturers for the first time. You have to walk to these random rooms or lecture halls all across the city. You have no idea where you are most of the time, because that's what my idea was. The hospital is really, really a big maze. So for most of the time, I thought, I've never seen this room before. And then friends tell you, no, we have. Like, we were here yesterday. So you're not in your place for the first couple of weeks. And I feel like what you're doing is you're just looking at other people and thinking, they come across as if they feel as if they belong here. So let's just pretend that I feel that way as well. And
Exactly.
eventually you'll find your place, or at least most people will find their place. Some people, unfortunately, won't. But I think that in the general case, it rules that indeed fake it till you make it.
And the funny thing is that those other people will see you and they will think, oh, he definitely knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
There was actually one student comment.
I was also looking at some.
Yeah, the same. I think somebody said, like, if you feel the pressure of not being at the same level as your classmates, look at their hands when they present. I bet they are shaking too. I really like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, other people also mentioned, I feel the pressure to demonstrate that I deserve to be here. And it's like, of course you deserve to be here, but I think it's kind of also sad that we do this to ourselves, and sometimes we're always just overthinking, like, but do I actually deserve? And just question ourselves.
But to say that you do it to yourself means that it's purely a process that goes on in your own head, and I'm not entirely convinced that it's something that's only related to you, because it's also the fact that we are a social animal, and therefore we also make we have a lot of impressions of others, and whether consciously or subconsciously, give off a lot of impressions to others. So I think that the fact that it's a very social environment in your university means that has a very, very important impact on you as well. I mean, it plays into mental processes, of course, but we shouldn't forget about the fact that there's other people in this university, and that has a very heavy impact on us.
No, but for me personally, even when, people are supportive all the time, but then when I go back in my room, like, people could have been like, oh my God, like, amazing, like, clapping or whatever. And then I'm like, wait, but I think this was wrong, etc. And then you start the overthinking and going into spirals again. So,
but that's where that minimal, or that rational minimal self-confidence should play in again, right? So it's minimal in the sense like, well, okay, they clapped. And like, if it's really, really bad, they probably won't clap.
Really? You think so?
I would think so. I
think
think
kind of respect. That they're clapping out of respect.
Clapping out of respect. I don't know.
Be rationalizing,
And it's, so I think if you at least minimally believe that, okay, I did something there.
Yeah.
And rationally speaking, I have very high odds of getting a pass, because that's what the vast majority of people do. And you are part of that, and you are part of people. So there's there's a high likelihood of you still getting a pass.
What about you? Like, how are you more towards, okay, I need to pass, or are you concerned about the grades?
I used to very, very much focus on grades, and that didn't help. So in medicine, the grades are the grading system is very strict, and it's dependent on group scoring. So if the overall group, let's just say, scores well, or if the exam is perceived as relatively easy, or at least statistics is then a proxy of whether they consider it easy or not, then the grades will be stricter. So you'll need a higher percentage score in order to get a passing grade. And the numerical grade is not of any value in medicine. They say, well, whether you've had a 6 or an 8, we don't care. But I did. Right? So, right? And it really matters that when you're used to high grades in high school, which I was up until my final year and up until biology, I was used to relatively high grades. Like in mathematics, I had high grades. I took Latin and ancient Greek in high school. I had high grades in that. And then all of a sudden you drop, and then you're like, well, that's not what's supposed to happen, right? So at first I struggled with that. I didn't even pass my first 2 exams, so I had like a 5.4 in the end, which is like a bare fail, a bare non-pass. And then you go home again and you think, okay, I'm doing really, really bad. Whereas a 5.4, it's a 0.1 away from a pass. Like you're almost there. Like you just had to know one or two things more, like one or two more multiple choice questions, and you were fine. Then for everyone who is in the faculty, in the staff, everyone who works at the hospital, they would say, well, then you're fine, right? If there's a final exam for a doctor and you score a 5.4, then they say, well, one or two questions more, and then you're fine to be a doctor. So a 5.4 isn't as much of a disaster as I thought it would, as I thought it was, but I thought it was horrible.
And how did that influence you? Like starting university and dropping grades and everything, like also the pressure from home and.
Well, yeah, I wanted to drop out because I still live with my parents for my first year for financial reasons, and what I did was I had to go by train very early, like around 6 in the morning, come to university, and I'd be here for the first morning lecture. And in medicine, usually they have like a lecture of half an hour at 9 a.m. and a lecture of half an hour at like 4 or something, and then a seminar from 6 to 8. So you'd barely get dinner anyway. And then I'd have to go home again, and I'd be home at 10. For the first week, I didn't even know that there was this thing called a syllabus.
Oh,
that was horrible as well. So for the first week, you're like, why does everyone know all of this? Oh, there's a syllabus. I didn't know.
Nobody told you.
Nobody told me, no. Maybe I was supposed to find out about it myself, but whatever.
No, but sorry for interrupting you, but it's so funny because our previous person we talked to, they also said when they went in and like they saw everyone was just the first week, everyone was just on top of their games and everyone knew all the documents and they read all the articles. They were like super shocked, you know.
It was horrible because the first week in medical school here is about genetic disorders, or like the first 4 weeks are about genetic and congenital disorders, diseases. The first week is themes chromosomal disorders. So, and then the main patient is the patient with Down syndrome. And the way it works is you start on Wednesdays and you end on Tuesdays. So you have the weekend in between the study. Because who cares about weekends, right? And then you would first get a brief introduction lecture about genetics, about chromosomes, about how Down syndrome develops. And then you'd have a lecture where there would be an actual patient there with Down syndrome and a guardian there. And you could ask questions about the patient, about what it's like to live with Down syndrome, both for the patient as well as the guardian, for example. And you'd have that every week. You'd see a patient with a specific condition that's discussed in that week, so that you always see patients from about 50 meters distance, safe distance, so they can't spin on you and stuff. No, I'm just kidding. Cut that out.
Because you would not want that.
And I remember during my first introduction lecture that people were asking questions about such like minute details of cell biology and genetics that I thought, holy, am I supposed to know this? I don't know this. I felt really insecure. I thought I don't know these things, but apparently they're important to know already because today's the first day. Like, why am I supposed to know this? And after, but what helped like break through that bubble were two things. So after that, we had the patient lecture, and the purpose of that lecture is to ask the patient and the guardian, in this case, how it's like to live with Down syndrome. Like how's your like health system arranged? How does it go with schooling? How does it go with feeding and stuff like that? And then the physician that was with us asked, all right, who in the group wants to ask the very first question of the year and of your year group? And this one guy raised his hand and he said, yes. Where do you have pain? And everyone was silent, and we were like, what do you mean pain? And then the doctor said, and then the doctor thought, all right, that seems firm, I guess, and went to the guardian and said, well, where's your child's pain? And the guardian was like, my child doesn't have any pain. And then the guy was like, oh, I don't know. Like, why are you here then? So he completely...
That was so nice of him.
He completely missed the purpose of the lecture. So what I noticed is, okay, not everyone is as smart as they seem. You're in a room with over 200 people.
You found comfort.
There's at least one person here that's probably just as stupid as I am.
And that you're better than them.
No, just as stupid as I am. No, like I'm not gonna play down other people. I'm just gonna pull them to my level. No, we're both stupid now. And what helped even more was the week thereafter, we had a seminar with the same 200 people, because our seminars aren't really seminars. At a certain point, the doctor that was there said, all right, we're going to play a role-playing game. And the doctor was looking for 2 students who wanted to be the parents of a newborn baby and 1 student to be the doctor. And the doctor had to tell the parents that the doctor has a suspicion of the child having Down syndrome or a genetic condition.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine, or well, at least now he's a friend of mine. I haven't seen him in a while, but he's now a friend. Back then, I was very scared of him because I thought he was very knowledgeable, always sitting at the front of the class, asking detailed questions, knew everything, answered everything. He said, "I want to be the doctor." So, all right. And there were 2 people who became the parents of the baby. They had a coat which they folded, and that was then supposed to be the baby. And my now friend. I won't name any names just for security reasons.
Yeah.
He got on an actual physician's a code, and he said, "All right, off you go." And he went to the parents. He said, "All right, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Dr. X. I'm your pediatrician. I want to congratulate you with your baby." And the parents were like, "Oh yes, thank you, really happy." Yeah. Doctor said, "Yeah, all right. So your baby is completely healthy. Nothing is wrong." And then the room went silent. Like, aren't you forgetting about something? And then he said, and then the parents were like, "Oh yes, thank you, great. That's great to know. Then we can go home, right?" And the doctor was like, "Well, I still want to do some tests. I'm gonna take your baby and do tests." And the parents freaked out. The dad had to restrain the mom. No joke.
We're talking about fictional parents.
This
right
was
now,
this was fiction. Yeah, no, this was all fictional.
Yeah, but they had to restrain each
A
other.
real cloth baby.
But the parents had the parents were really doing a good job of how parents would in actuality respond. I mean, if you were a doctor, you'd go to someone and say, "Hi, your baby is healthy, but I'm gonna do tests on him and take him from you right now." I would go nuts. I'd be all over I'd be crawling all over the ceiling. Like, no, you're not gonna do that to my baby.
You're not gonna test my baby.
You're not gonna test my baby if my baby's healthy, right? And then he meant to say, no, but like, I think he has Down syndrome, and people with Down syndrome are still healthy. And then the mom was like, "What?" And then and more screaming ensued. And that's when I thought, okay, it's also where they ended the scene, and that's where I thought, okay, I might have more social skills than I initially anticipated. So the fact that that person has a lot of factual knowledge, a lot of medical knowledge, knows a lot about Down syndrome, a lot about concepts, doesn't mean he's a good doctor or a good communicator, at least. And I thought, well, I could have done that better. Like, I don't know anything about Down syndrome. I didn't at that point even. It was a week after that introduction lecture. But I thought, I know that. I know that I should not have done that. Mm-hmm. And that helped.
So then you just realize, oh, people have different talents, and I might have a different talent that I can use or something.
It's not necessarily about talent; it's more about fallibility. So it's more that it's more that you really, when you start university, you have to believe that you shouldn't fail, and that how could you fail? Because as you said as well earlier, like, you're always thinking why do I deserve to be here? But you particularly think about that after you made a mistake, because apparently making mistakes is not a thing in university anymore. In high school, you do it all the time and you're corrected for it. In elementary school, you get hurt by it because you fall on the playground. In university, apparently you've already had so many mistakes in the past, you're not supposed to do anymore. That's nonsense, but we believe that for some reason.
Is it something that you told yourself or something that you heard as well?
It's something I told myself. I don't remember having ever heard it, but at least it seems as if in high school, you have this integrated group of people who you already know for 6 years, and of who you know. Well, yeah, like if you're in like first grade in high school, you were like, yeah, like a year ago you were still playing with sand. So I know you're
Totally.
like, I know we're equal. I know
I still do.
We're fine. So you still do.
Yes, it's very relaxing.
I bet so. But you don't have that in university, right? Because because between high school and university, there's some sort of selection process, right? Or at least for medicine there is. So it's like, all right, all the people still playing with sand are filtered out. I'm not supposed to make any mistakes anymore, because why would they select people who make mistakes? Doctors make mistakes, get sued, they kill patients, right? So why should I make mistakes? But what I think is most important is realizing fallibility, the fact that everyone is prone to making mistakes and everyone is prone to failure, but that people just don't show that.
I think the pressure really also comes from the grades themselves, and it's like, oh, you did so many mistakes. Because you also mentioned how in the beginning you were very concerned about your grades, and then
Right.
later kind of got over that. Like, how did the change happen? Can you walk us through the process? Did you realize when you told yourself, okay, maybe I shouldn't be stressing myself over it too much?
Well, after I scored those 2 grades, which together became a 5.4, we headed into the second block, and I scored really well there, like a 7.5, 8. That's, but I didn't really change anything disproportionately about my method of studying. So I thought maybe it's just a topic, maybe it's just getting used to things. But the fact that I just had a 5.4 scarred me for life. I thought, okay, never again. So at first you're like, all right, I really, really want to pass these things. But starting the second semester, I also joined the honors program. And normally speaking, you are only invited when you have high grades. I did not, particularly at least, compared to some other people who scored 9s and 10s on their exams. And a friend of mine got invited to the honors college. She said, yeah, I apparently scored high enough. I got an invite. And I was like, I didn't get an invite, but that sounds really nice. I'm just going to sign up. Like, I don't care. Like, you're not going to invite me? I'll make you regret it. And I got in. Whoops. Starting then, I started garnering a lot more study load in my second year of medicine. I started also doing a board year of the Honors College Social Association, HGSA. And that's when I really started thinking, well, starting from now on, I only want to do things that I find cool to do. So I've stressed a lot about medicine, and eventually I found my place. And I found nice research topics through the honors program. I thought, okay, I'll stay in medicine for this because that's what I find interesting. I want to do the honors program because I find that interesting. The board year I thought was interesting. I thought from now on I'm only going to do things if I find them interesting, and if I don't, I'll stop doing them. And that's when your grades start to decline as well. But they still,
Wow, so inspiring.
because studying is not interesting. But
Don't say that.
But I did get passing grades. So eventually, I started prioritizing just other things.
Yeah.
I thought, the grade is really and generally just a number, and I don't think it reflects anything in terms of who you are, what your qualities are. The extremes might do. If you score a 3, you really don't know anything. If you score a 10, you really know a lot. I think everything in the middle is great. If you score a 5.4, you get an existential crisis. But I think everything in the middle is just gray area.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't make sense to compare a 7 and a 6 and say, oh, the 7 is better, because it's only marginally better, and it could also be randomly better because depending on the questions they ask, you might know better or worse. I don't think there's a difference between those grades, for example.
And did this way of thinking also change your perception of the workload or the amount of stress that you felt?
Yes, because if it's interesting, you get more energy out of it than that you put into it. I feel like whenever I'm stressed, it's usually when there's something that I have to do that's inevitable, or it's something that I thought was interesting at first but is really starting to lose my interest. That as soon as I have to put more work into it than energy that I get out of it, that's when I start getting stressed, and it's typically when I also start quitting things. And I'm perfectly happy with that. So I feel like I've after 4 years of studying, I've garnered some kind of instrument to measure whether something will give me stress or not. And I'm sometimes I'm wrong, and that's fine. And sometimes I skip over things or don't do things because I think that they will give me stress, like doing the dishes, and then it turns out not to be difficult after all, and that there's also a lot of fungus in my pan, so maybe I should have done it earlier. So the instrument isn't perfect, and that's fine, but it works for most of the time, and I'm happy with that.
And would you say that you are then maybe even struggling less now than you have been before? Or?
Yes, despite doing more than I have ever before.
Why do you think that is?
So that shift in priority is really what I think makes that's it was.
Bad.
I had to think about that.
Yeah.
I think that shift in priority. So the fact that I shifted from focusing on grades, focusing on passing, focusing on looking good to my peers, focusing on anything of that sort. Like I stopped focusing on anything academic. If you look at the broader scheme, because I started doing things I'm interested in, and right now I'm interested in studying philosophy. And my research supervisors in the hospital made a joke because one of them is a microbiologist, and he said, "Well, what are you going to do? Study the philosophy of bacteria?" And I said, "If it's a thing, I'll do it." But I said, "No, like I'm interested in this, so that's what I'm going to do. And my research can wait, or we can do it part-time for now. And at a certain point, I'll join you full-time. I'll do that starting this June. But for now, we're going to do it part-time because I really like philosophy, and so I'm going to do that now." So I shifted away from academics.
Were there any hurdles to come this far, to get to this mindset, basically?
Yeah, that's what
No.
I have to think about. No, of course not. No,
No.
I'm amazing.
No, I'll never.
Hurdles? What do you mean? What are those? No, I have to think about that. So hurdles, what kind of hurdles do you mean?
Well, I need to think of that.
Okay, but honestly, I think it's nice that we're talking what you're going through right now, because I think it's a like hopeful, inspiring story. Because as you said first, like the biology classes in high school, like you couldn't even pass, but then like you got accepted, and then in the end you did follow what you want because you were initiative. You took the initiative to lead because you're a leader. This is our own
Apparently.
by the way. Yeah. But then also like the grades as well, like you didn't let that like stop you first initial at university.
But I think what I was more into is like showing that it's very nice that you're at this place now, but maybe somebody is listening and thinking, oh, that sounds so easy and I don't know how to do that. And I think I was more into like showing that it is not a linear process, that sometimes not everything is easy, and that there are allowed to be struggles. And often when you tell a story like after if you tell a story from a better place, like you're in a better place now, it sounds as though it was easy to get there, and I just wanted to.
And that's exactly the problem here as well, because right now, I mean, a little bit about what I'm doing this year. I'm doing the regular master's in philosophy. I'm doing the honors program. For the honors program for my master work,
for leaders.
I'm for leadership, right? Or in leadership. For my master's work, I'm writing a book, which is probably going to be more than 5 ECS, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm involved with different kinds of projects in public philosophy. I'm doing research at the hospital in pediatric cancer and complications of chemotherapy for children with cancer. I am doing 2 board years, one at the honors review, so at the paper, one at progressive medicine, which is like a student representation body at the UMCG. I work as a TA for over 5 different courses. So I see about a little over 1,000 students a year, from biology, medicine, pharmacy, movement sciences, biomedical engineering, biomedical science, dentistry. So I'm nuts, right? So I'm doing a lot of things, and then saying, oh, well, I got here just because I stopped focusing on grades and academics. I'm sure that there's people listening to this and think, you're being ridiculous. Why should I not focus on grades, right?
For the people listening, honestly, I was thinking how they might have been super stressed right now when you listed all those stuff you're doing this year. And I was like, oh my God, poor them. We were trying to actually calm people down. And now they might feel like they're not doing enough.
No,
well, but basically is also focusing on the things you find interesting and do what you can.
And even for the honors college, like you didn't get invited, but you applied yourself for the bachelor's honors program.
Exactly.
So you just need sometimes to take the lead and just try.
Right. So it's about taking initiative, and it's easier said than done, really, because if you're already feeling stressed right now and already feel like you don't have a way out, then what's this random person who is doing relatively fine going to convince you of, right? But I've been in a far worse position. I've had a history of mental illness, problems within my family. I come from low income. I've faced different forms of discrimination in the past. So there's all kinds of social hurdles, and life just isn't easy. But at a certain point, when you have your focus and interest ready and written down on paper in front of you, I have like a list of all the things that I do that I've written down. I have it put like above my laptop on my desk, like on the wall behind it, so that every time I look up or every time I'm not bothered, I look at all the things I do. And then if it turns out I'm really feeling stressed, I'm thinking, okay, which one am I going to drop? Which one do I not like anymore? And then I'll stop. And it doesn't mean like this, like I don't instantly stop, but I'll say, all right, I'm going to delegate tasks, quiet quit maybe. But at a certain point, I'm going to quit that because it's not giving me the energy anymore that I have.
How long do you take usually to just, graph things out? Like, for example, as you say, on like lists of different stuff and structuring them, how you're going to do what and prioritize certain stuff. Like, how often do you do that? Like, try to have a structure, write stuff down, etc.
I do it at least, like, I probably do it around once per block because that's when you get new courses. It usually means you also know what your schedule is going to be.
So every 3 months, every 2 months, something
so
like that.
It's something like that. I wouldn't I would recommend against doing it more often, and I would also recommend against doing it for more than half an hour at a time, because I think if you're doing it for too long, at a certain point you're going to doubt yourself. But I mean, my and I've talked with my psychologist about this, and because I've talked with her about how I'm very bad at doing chores around my house. I don't like doing the dishes. I don't like vacuum cleaning. I don't like doing my laundry. I don't like cooking. So I just often eat out or eat poorly. And last conversation we had, she said, "Well, why aren't you just doing it?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I mean, at a certain point, you have to stop being a little wuss."
Oh, wow.
And that's what she really said. She said, "Look, you're smart. You're in university. You're doing 2 degrees at the same time. You're doing all kinds of things that some people dream of doing, and then you come to me like a little crybaby saying you can't do the dishes." She said, "Grow up."
She was not your therapist, right?
She is, and I love her because I think because I thought she was right. I thought, I mean, you are kind of right. I'm doing so many great things at the same time. I'm in medical school. I'm going to become a doctor at some point. And then that same doctor would say, "Oh, I can't do, like, I don't like doing the dishes." She's like, "Well, sometimes you just have to do things that you don't like."
I think it's actually good that you asked for help.
And she told you,
those
"Don't
things.
come to me complaining about those
No,
stuff."
but maybe that's just what you needed to hear,
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. That's it. She she never implied that I shouldn't have come to her. She was like, "Great that you're here. Great, because now you get to fix things." And like now you had like now she said something around the lines of, "I'm being paid for telling people to do what they already know they're supposed to do." So she says she has the most amazing job in the world. Telling people something that they already know, but that they're just not willing to commit to it yet, and then you get paid hourly. So that's great, and I'm jealous of her.
It's like this having a psychologist in your life, does that help you a lot? Like also maybe to have come to this place and how you're gonna continue to have someone to talk to?
I think so. Not and having a psychologist or having a therapist or anything of that respect doesn't make you crazy. I think you're more crazy if you don't do it, if that's a word I'm allowed to use. Anyway, because I think that the vast majority of mental issues that we're dealing with also in university are problems in living. So I think that what we're doing is we don't have actual disorders. I don't think there's something wrong in our brain. I don't think that we're so mentally scarred that we're really incapable of doing something. I think that what we're having is that we're having a problem in living. So there's just something that happens to us that we find difficult to deal with because we either don't have the tools to do it. We've had a history with parents, family members, with our youth, for example, that makes it difficult. We don't have access to the proper resources. And then everyone needs at least a person, whether it's a therapist or whether it's just a good friend, to tell you, like to sometimes just tell you like how things work, to have you list things like, okay, but what is it that bothers you? What do you not like about those things? How can you change those things? It's simple, systematic things like that some people need a therapist for, some people need a very good friend for, some people need an AI bot for, which I think is perfectly fine as well. As long as you have some kind of resource that helps you reflect, because I think that as a
Or plushies.
yeah, because I think that as a social being or a social animal, it's not possible to do that on your own, even for the most egoistic, individualistic people out there.
Just to switch to another topic, but that also you kind of mentioned in your questionnaire when you were answering. I wanted to talk a little bit about housing, because
Right.
you are a Dutch person, but you also mentioned that you are, struggling with your landlord, at least in the
Yes.
questionnaire, and just housing in general. So I thought it would be very interesting, because usually in the Netherlands, we more talk about, like, as international students, about, okay, we're very much struggling with this and landlords, etc.
Right.
And I thought it would be very nice for you, like, to also talk about how you are experiencing that, because Dutch people are also moving around the country as well,
Right.
I was
So-
already like, what is the link with being Dutch and problems with housing? But now I get it.
Well, yeah, exactly. I feel like
Right?
I feel like what's generally speaking considered to be the case is that, and this doesn't account for everyone, but it accounts for, I think, a lot of people, that in the case of international students, it's difficult to find housing because they either have some sort of weird random Dutch language requirement, or
Yeah.
and because there's just little housing in general. In my case, it was affordability.
Mhm.
So in my case, it was really that I couldn't afford it and I didn't want to rack up debt.
Mhm.
Now I have a stable employment, and I also borrow money, so I am racking up some debt, but I've come to terms with that. So for the first year, I lived with my parents, and for the first about half a year, that went relatively fine. My parents didn't really know what I was doing in Groningen. They just knew that eventually I'd become a doctor, so they said, all right, he's probably just doing like important stuff there, whatever. So you'd leave home at 6 a.m, you'd come home at around 11 p.m. You would still have to do coursework. At least in my case, I would still have to do coursework and sleep and find time to have dinner at some point.
And wash the dishes.
I didn't have to when I was at when I still lived with my parents. We had I didn't have to do the dishes. My mom has a lot of. My mom works part time, so she takes care of most of the household chores in my parents' house. But then COVID came, like the big C word.
COVID? Oh, I've never heard of it.
Wait. Explain, because you're a medicine student. What is that?
So the big C word was this virus at some point, and what happened is that we all started clapping for hospital people for like one day, and the prime minister was on the television all the time. I don't know.
Nice summary.
Weird time.
Oh,
Weird time.
yeah.
And coughing was coughing was punishable by death. So no, it's
Ha.
Honestly, I'm so glad we're through that time.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore in great
No.
detail. But what I do want to mention is that as soon as that started, all my classes started moving online. I didn't have to go to Groningen anymore. For a lot of people, that was a lot of fun because you don't have to go to class in person anymore. International students could go abroad, go back to their parents and take follow courses from there. I think there was a guy in my year who originally came from South Korea who went back there, but the problem was then that his classes would be at 2 a.m. So that's less ideal, perhaps. But if you live in Europe, then most of the time you'll be fine. But I was stuck with my parents, and being with your parents 24/7, at least me being with my parents 24/7, was really difficult for me. And so that's when I thought I have to move out, and that was really difficult to arrange financially. Eventually, I got a place, and then it turned out that the landlord was overcharging me, as is typical in Groningen. Or
Never heard of that.
Never heard of that, of course. And I think after about a year, 1.5 years, I talked to my roommates about this and said, look, we're paying a lot of money, but our bathroom is essentially a disaster. Like the water would come back out of the shower drainage, and at some point even our entire shower was filled, like the entire bathroom was filled with water. And then we called our landlord, and he said, I can't come right now. And I said, well, if you can't come right now, then tomorrow we're dead by drowning, then because then this is just overflowing. And then he came, and then it turned out he didn't want to come because he just had eyelid corrective surgery, so just cosmetic surgery, and he wasn't allowed to work for 4 days. Boo-hoo. Yeah, so there's that. And eventually we even had to file a lawsuit because he was overcharging us.
Oh.
Which did reduce my rental price, but also made the relationship with my landlord very rough. And I, like, up until last October, I used to live with, like, one of the roommates was in his 30s. He didn't speak any English or Dutch, only Arabic. And he was difficult to work with. He, like, wouldn't clean his dishes. But in the public
Like you.
in the public
No, we're
kitchen, I
joking.
have my own kitchen. He wouldn't help cleaning the bathroom. He was loud. He was smoking inside, and I'm asthmatic, so I really preferred him not to do that. He would shower in the middle of the night, and then when we would complain about it, he would say, "But this is student housing, so I'm allowed to do that." And then our response was, "You're the only non-student in this house." So it was really difficult. Still better than living with my parents, but but it's not as but
you
it's,
would go that far.
but it's not as if you're in a good situation. So for me, it was still a very bad time in the beginning.
And how did you come out of that?
With the lawsuit as well. How did that go?
We won, so we got a reduction in our rent.
But did you have to pay? Like, because when you go to that drastic step,
It was this kind of legal company that would only ask for like a 20% of like the winnings of the first several months or so, or something like that.
Okay.
So then, it was like a no win, no pay kind of arrangement. So it didn't cost me a lot. It only cost me the difference in rent for 2 months, I think, which would have been money that I would have paid anyway if I hadn't had the lawyer. And after that, that was another, well, I think $100 or something a month extra in my pocket.
Great. For in the questionnaire as well, you also mentioned, like, we asked about university and do you approach university and do you contact them about your struggles? And I just was very interested to hear about, like, your response, because you did say that I have not contacted, like, the university in regards, like,
No.
to my struggles. Why?
I've only talked with the study advisor once, and that was because I was doing this, it's a course in BLS, Basic Life Support. It's basically hospital first aid. And during the course, I was very anxious, according to the teacher. And during the final exam, when I was giving rescue breaths, I put my mouth over the doll's nose, and you're not allowed to. And that's not how that works.
And why would you do that?
I made a lot of mistakes. I was a bit nervous. She said, "I'm going to give you a pass if and only if you talk to the study advisor."
Oh.
Okay.
Because she thought I had like a failure anxiety.
Oh.
So I said, all right, I'll go.
I have that.
I went to the study advisor, and after a 5-minute talk, he said, "You don't have failure anxiety. You were just nervous." And I was like, "Well, how do you know that?" And he was like, because you, like, you're not afraid to fail because when you know you'll fail, then you're not afraid. And he said I didn't come across as someone who had failure anxiety, and I still don't have failure anxiety. And the lady still failed me, by the way, for my BLS course. So I had to complain with the faculty, but it was all arranged. It was all fine. So no, but it's also never felt as if that was the right place to put these things, because the study advisors, they're really just for stuff related to your degree. And of course, I had issues with that. I didn't pass my first block, but I thought, let's wait and see. I never felt as if the help from the university could be as genuine as a therapist would be, or as a very good friend would be.
Yeah, to be honest, I do think you have a point about that, but because we also send a questionnaire to the advisors themselves, and we also ask them about what they are being approached with. A lot of the problems they did mention are actually, personal problems, like family problems, perfectionism, procrastination, time management, and just, also mental health, stress. And one of the most common advice we got from the study advisors themselves was how they say, do please approach us
Yeah.
before it's too late. So
Yeah.
they were always emphasizing in their answers about how, you shouldn't wait, or whenever you're struggling, like you need to be very early and report either to a professor or study advisor immediately.
Yeah.
And I think if they will see that you need any other help, that they will just
They could also refer
yeah.
you.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
What I remember as well, there was this one answer where it said, even if you think the university won't help you or it doesn't concern it, but it might still affect your study progress or whatever, like just keep up the professors up to date with what you're going through as well, and don't go off the grid.
Right.
Like that was literally like quote by quote, like
Right.
a thing
Yeah.
they said, which was very interesting to me as well, that it helps as well,
Right.
some students did.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, my claim here is not that I think that the study advisors don't help at all. My claim is that at the time I didn't know that they would anyway.
No, exactly.
So
it's-
I never went to the faculty or to a study advisor or anything like that because I thought they can't help me anyway, and they can.
Mm.
But I felt like the university perhaps knew a lot more about academics than about personal life, and so I sought a therapist instead of a study advisor.
Yeah. It might not only be study advisor related, but there are actually quite many people, students in the questionnaire that mentioned, yes, university has helped me in any way, but not sufficiently.
Yeah.
Do you have the statistics?
I
in front
do
of you?
have them
We
somewhere.
had also percentage, and it was
I-
very interesting.
Yeah, so we got 20 responses total, and the question was, has a university helped you in any way with your struggles? And then the options were yes, sufficiently, yes, but not sufficiently, or no. And 15.8% answered yes, they have helped me sufficiently. And then 31.6% answered yes, but not sufficiently. And then 52.6% answered no. But that could also be that they have not searched for help in any way. So
Yeah.
that could be biased.
So I think
Yeah.
it's important to just raise
Yeah.
awareness, and for anyone listening, that please do contact people, and no one can guarantee that you're going to receive like an actual like sufficient help that you need, but it would be nice to
Exactly.
just start taking the steps.
Mm.
And also one of the responses of the other advisors, they did mention that there are workshops and courses from the Student Service Center and Wellbeing Portal on the student portal on Brightspace for our university as well, where you could also, I mean, if anyone's interested, can look for some workshops, little like lectures that are also educational.
The thing though
Wellbeing.
with those things is that it takes more time, which you sometimes don't have. Like,
Yeah.
I think they do have a time management
Yeah.
course, right? I followed the exam stress one because I don't have failure anxiety, but I do just think exams suck. So I do get very stressed,
yeah.
not because I'm afraid I'll fail, but just because of the existence of an exam. So I took that. I think it was a seminar.
Did
that
it help?
I thought it was nice, and whether it helped, eventually I just had to get over it. Like a 2-hour seminar is not going to solve everything at once,
No,
of course.
no.
So don't consider them like panaceas, but they were really nice, and they did give some very useful tips that I
Yeah.
didn't think about.
So maybe for the people that answered that university has not helped sufficiently or not at all, maybe it's just nice to know that those workshops and stuff is out there
Yeah.
and that it
And
can.
Again, we're
Yeah.
not saying that it covers everything.
No,
that
no.
It's just, look for
Yeah.
different sources. There are also student psychologists as well that some of the advisors mentioned.
I've heard that the waiting list for those is pretty long right now, right?
Oh,
Or-
it could be.
I
I don't
mean-
know.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned this, but when we sent out the study advisor questionnaire, like when we emailed them, we immediately got at least like 10, 12 automatic emails that did say out of office, which,
I thought
it's
they were
true.
very busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky, and everyone's super busy, so you also
Mm.
get that waiting time could be,
Did you also contact the study advisors from medicine?
I think we contacted
Yeah,
all faculties.
All
Yeah,
faculties.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I just don't want to be too negative about
No,
it
no.
because I'm like, what would university be like if they were not there?
Yeah, exactly.
That would be
Worse.
Worse, way worse.
Worse than this. Yeah. And also, like, we got a lot of responses as well.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
half of the people we contacted,
Yeah.
they really took the time out
Yeah.
of their day to actually help our
Yeah,
project.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that was very nice.
And
Right.
many actually mention, I think you already mentioned this as well, just sometimes talking to somebody about something that you're struggling with already helps. And they mentioned what we do to a great extent is listen. Just listen to
Yeah.
what a person has to tell.
Like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I guess for finishing, we also plan like to just ask our guests to talk mention a positive story they can think of that really gave them hope, or something or advice you hear
Mhm.
often, the best advice you've heard, or just a situation that really was positive and made you feel better in a bad
Yeah.
moment.
When you asked for a hopeful story, I thought, oh God, I have to think.
You have none,
But
or
there's something I am going to take my survey results now because the answer is in here. I have So
You have it.
So I wrote down university life is suffering because we all long for something perfect. The solution to this is to reduce your desire to have compassion for others who suffer and enjoy meaningful things outside of university. A while ago, for the University Wellbeing Weeks organized by the SKLO and Lijst Calimero and another multiple other stakeholders, I suppose. I was asked to hold a lecture or some sort of reading about a topic of my choosing, and I chose this. Part of philosophy is learning about these very vague philosophers that are in some very odd ways very applicable to your own life. And one of them is a German philosopher called Arthur Schopenhauer, who lived in the 18th century. He was very, very depressed because every girl that he hit on either disliked him or broke up with him or divorced him or died. So he died alone. He is what we call he's like the founder of pessimistic philosophy. He's very negative in his worldview, and he writes about how life, in essence, is simply suffering. And it's very weird to draw inspiration or to provide advice based on a pessimist. Essentially, what he says is the fact that life is always suffering is because we are beings who desire perfect things. We have this desire within us that he calls will, and the will is something perfect, but we don't see it. We don't have access to it, but the will does drive us to do things. And because the will is perfect and we are not, because we are simply a representation, we're just a scheme, a vision, something we see, not something beyond what we actually are. We are imperfect beings looking for perfect things that we can never find. So every time you try to satisfy yourself, you think you see something perfect, but it ends up not being. And that constant struggle is what gives us suffering. When you're hungry, you eat, and you think that with eating your satisfaction stops, but it doesn't. You start drinking, and after you finish that, you think, well, I need to see some people. And after you've gone to a party, you think, no, I want to be alone again. So you're always desiring something, and you never get to the end of it. And university life is a little bit like that as well. You always want a higher grade. You always want to do better. You always want to get an extra course. You always want to do a better degree, a better job than everyone else. You always want to talk to that one nice teacher who might be able to get that nice job opportunity for you. You always want to finish that research project on time. You always want to do everything at the same time. You desire the perfect without realizing you are a deeply imperfect being. And so the solution to this, according to Schopenhauer, is three things. The first is what he calls asceticism, which basically means stop wanting things. It's like what a Buddhist monk does. But he says, well, it's not attainable for most people. But I translate in case of university life, that's my first advice, try to desire less, which sounds very vague. But in terms of grades, for example, it's fine not to score an 8 or a 9 or a 10. It's fine to be a 7 or a 6 or a 5.5 or a 5.4. It's fine to also not pass things at first try. We're not here to stop making mistakes. We're here to start learning more deeply from them. back in high school, you make mistakes. I mean, when you get a 6 on, so back in high school, when you got a grade, suppose an 8, you think, oh, nice, cool, gone, right? You don't care about it anymore. And in elementary school, I don't even realize ever having stressed about grades. You only do it in university. That's weird. We should stop doing that. So first is to reduce our desire for things. The second is compassion. That's my second advice. It's the fact that other people are suffering just as much as you. So when I first started studying medicine, I thought, oh, I'm the only person here. I'm the only person suffering. Look at me. I'm very sad. I didn't pass high school biology. I'm going to be the worst student ever. But everyone else in that room is suffering just as much as you are. Schopenhauer also said, well, the fact that you are an imperfect being looking for perfect things means that literally everyone else is. And Schopenhauer even included animals, plants, and objects. He said, well, those are all suffering too. Everything is suffering. And to have compassion for others, which is to realize that they are suffering just as much as you are, that might be part of a solution to your feeling of suffering. It won't cure it, because we always will be, but it will help you in managing it. And the third one for Schopenhauer was aesthetic experience. So Schopenhauer said the best thing to relieve ourselves of suffering is through art. And for Schopenhauer, the highest form is music. He also mentioned landscaping for some odd reason. He thought landscaping was a good form of art that would relieve you of suffering. I've never seen people, and he doesn't mean gardening. Like, he means landscaping, like making shapes in grass.
Okay.
That's what he means.
Fun, actually.
Is it? Have you done it before? Or
yeah, I do it while I play with the sand.
I see. Yeah, so that's that's one form of aesthetic
Full
experience.
circle.
Yeah. And but in terms of university life, I translate that to my third advice, which is to enjoy meaningful things outside of academia. My focus has shifted from academics to what I'm interested in, right? And if you do what you're interested in, it doesn't matter anymore what you do, I think. And those three things are, at least according to a rough translation of Schopenhauer to this situation, the antidote to one's university life suffering.
Wow, did you prepare that?
No.
Okay.
Is there anything more that you want to mention that you feel like that has not come to the fore in this conversation, that you still feel like, I want it out, I want to say that? Or
that last bit about Schopenhauer was that.
That was that.
Yeah,
you
I'm
really
good now.
wanted to
Well,
get
yeah,
that
we-
in.
yeah, we could
I'm out of
feel it.
breath
Yeah.
now.
Are you friends in any way? Do you know him personally?
Schopenhauer? He's been
Yeah.
dead for 200 years.
Oh no! I mean,
No. Don't know him.
No. Oh.
you were
Invite him to the
infamous.
podcast.
Yeah.
Oh no, he died alone.
No,
Oh.
maybe he speaks through you.
Yeah,
now.
that
Maybe he
could
speaks
be.
through me.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows?
No, I was joking.
But I think that's a very nice place to end, because that's how we started about imperfections, you know.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
literally a full circle, you
Right.
know. It was the ideal
Very
final
natural.
piece. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Not artificial at all.
No, this was
No.
not planned.
No.
Okay, thank you very much for being a guest for us. This was very nice.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and thank you for listening to everyone listening. Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.